In this video, I'm going to be discussing more on synthetic philosophy, and in particular, I'm going to be discussing Frankenstein, and discussing this within a context of a thought experiment I've developed to really illustrate the differences between empirical, perceptual, and synthetic meaning in regards to these different levels of perception and awareness and recognition that can occur within perception. And also as it pertains to the mind and concepts of the self, we can think of these three levels of awareness as well as information processing associated with life or with being, and actually having a general awareness of the surroundings and responding to that in an intelligent way. And when we think about Frankenstein or creating life, we're starting very much from a state in which we had matter that may have or may have not have been invigorated with these mental processes, in particular these life processes and a sense of being that's associated with life, and which is distinct from matter, which is distinct from this indifferent physical stuff that's around us and surrounds us. So we could think of physical stuff, and we could think of psychological stuff or mind stuff, and I believe the philosopher Philip Goff tends to use that term a lot, and I think he was the one who really coined that term, was mind stuff, which is different than this physical stuff. It has more to do with this psychological component and the nature of our perceptions and the meaning that's contained also within perceptions. So very much when we're looking at perception, there's this mind stuff, but there's also physical stuff that's adjacent to that, and that's represented in Frankenstein. Frankenstein, who from all these parts, physical parts, both biological and non-biological, more physical, he's being worked on by Dr. Frankenstein, who's collected all these former body parts and reconstituted them, as well as nourished them to be able to operate as if it were alive, and as if it had the same capabilities as us as individuals, as people, with a self in particular. He wants to see if he can not only just create life, but create an individual, create a person. And there's these three levels we can look at in regards to awareness. He can get the body going, and on a cellular level really bring the cells to life, and these life processes that have a very basic sense of awareness and information processing associated with them. So a perceptual process that's occurring at a low level of resolution, that's not really too concerned with these psychological motivations or these needs, say, for regulating body temperature with clothing or tool use in particular. Not really concerned with or interested in particular topics or subjects, understanding the nature of the cosmos. Not necessarily interested in moving to a nice shady location away from the hot sun after walking all day in search for food, but more serving its proximate and surrounding needs and interests. It's still exchanging resources, it's still exerting effort and relaxing, repairing itself in various ways, healing and responding to its environment. So on a very basic level, on like a cellular level, Frankenstein, when he enters this first stage really of perception and being, he's not really there in terms of having a self or having a conscious awareness, but has an awareness of the surroundings occurring at a cellular level, and which is not really holding the whole together in a significant way. Very much the body of Frankenstein really has to be prepped up by these other parts that are being organized largely outside of Frankenstein to be able to keep Frankenstein going through maybe like electrical pulses and various chemicals that are being pumped into the body to get it to start to work together and to form more of these higher level cognitive as well as conscious processes that require higher level capacities in processing of our perceptions. And as we move to this second level, you might have some of these instincts and these more animalistic qualities in which Frankenstein might start to breathe and maybe show neurological activity in terms of there might be some thought or dreaming, maybe some reflexes that we get going, and can start, maybe Frankenstein opens his eyes, it can start to do these very basic tasks, and we start testing Frankenstein a bit, and he's starting to perform some of these animalistic functions, but there's not quite a sense of self. There's more this perceptual meaning that's there. This more to do with navigating the environment and the local surroundings in terms of keeping the body alive and surviving, but not necessarily having this awareness or recognition of the embodied self, of the self as an individual, distinct from what's being perceived and being processed within these psychological states that are starting to really link perception with our physiology in these fundamental ways through more of these paired associations and these responses that are learned in relation to the self and the surroundings. And so we can have this conscious awareness of the environment and these basic fundamental information processes, and have them move into a state in where they're starting to align and communicate with each other and form these systems of operation rather than these independent processes that may be competing or may just be occurring simultaneously, and which at times link up and influence each other, at times act synergistically and form these paired associations and connections and connectivities, as well as start to form these higher level constituencies and start to operate more synchronously, but also simultaneously and synergistically, allowing for these higher order perceptual processes to occur, which relate to our self-subjectivity and that development of self and this higher capacity for self-intelligence. So as we see Frankenstein move to the last stage in which he's starting to develop this identity as an individual, as a person, this is where we start to really delve deep into these ideas of perception and consciousness and a synthetic meaning, a meaning that can be willed from this basic awareness of the empirical, the surrounding awareness of what's around us as living organisms. So moving from that more vegetative state to also being able to perceive that and respond to it. So a stimulus and response much more in this animalistic domain, in which we're moving to that second layer, in which Frankenstein is not just laying on a bed and being propped up and the cells are kind of just more aware of the surroundings and environment, but actually processing that in a way that's meaningful and making sense of these representations and interpreting what's around them in more of these meaningful ways, but not in a way that has this transcendent meaning, more in a stimulus, a response, or a paired association type of meaning, a meaning that's direct to perception, but not necessarily self-aware or has this capacity for cognizance, really utilizing the information and meaning within perception and directing it in a particular way, and understanding the influence of doing so on the self and the influence of various aspects of our perception on the self, including motivations, emotions, feelings, actions, subsequent perceptions, feelings, meanings, what's perceived as significant, etc. So the highest form of perceptual awareness is going to involve a conscious aware process as well as a cognitive process and a meaning process that's bound up within this perceptual process, in which things are perceived as significant and relevant to the self. The self has particular interests and ways of interpreting the surroundings that are relatively unique and help to individuate them from the surroundings, and which we can start to see a sense of autonomy really forming between the self and natural world and the natural surroundings. So this should give you an idea of how synthetic meaning is distinct from this empirical and perceptual meaning that relates to the nature of being and the nature of the mind. And when we think about life and how life processes occur, oftentimes there's this natural empirical meaning and even a perceptual meaning that's there, but the synthetic meaning seems to be very unique to these concepts of the self and subjectivity, and has much more to do with this willed component, in which we're really cultivating the empirical and the perceptual meaning, and we're synthesizing that much as we're getting to a person within Frankenstein. We're getting to recognize the self within Frankenstein as we start to synthesize these different layers of meaning from the empirical to the perceptual, as Dr. Frankenstein is doing, as he's starting to form these different mind, body, environment constituents into a single constituency that creates this entity that is Frankenstein, who has an embodied self that isn't just this passive cell, or that isn't just an animal, but is more than that. He's an individual with a self, and is curious about whether or not he has a soul or not, or this mind that he can will, and that's unique to him as an individual, and starts to potentially wonder about who he is as an individual and explore his personality more deeply. Anyway, so that's all I wanted to say for this video, so I hope you enjoy it. Bye.